Warhammer is a wonderful hobby for those interested in tabletop games, painting, or storytelling. I'm going to walk you through what you need to do before you begin painting. I'm going to be working with a dispossessed warrior for this. Before focusing on the model, we need to go over what you need to get started modeling. You're going to need tools for getting the model ready. You'll need cutters for cutting the model pieces from the sprue or frame on which the model is formed. You'll also need a hobby knife for removing mold lines and imperfections. It is a good idea to also have a file or sanding material to further smooth the mold lines and imperfections. For this, I use sanding pins. While not entirely necessary, you may want to grab some tweezers if your model requires greater precision when assembling. You'll also need glue to assemble your model. I use a combination of liquid superglue and gel superglue. The liquid is for gluing together the figure and the gel is for gluing the figure to the base. Make sure to pick up a can of hobby spray primer. This coating will help the paint stick to the model. When you open the box to your Warhammer model, you'll find gray frames called sprues. You'll also find discs. These are your bases. They are used to support your model on the tabletop. Before you can assemble and paint your figure, you must prime the sprues. How you go about priming your sprues is up to you. I like to use a cardboard box when I prime. Be sure to spray in a well-ventilated area such as outside so as to minimize fume inhalation. Also make sure to spray in an area that is not too cold or too hot. Spraying outside of an optimal temperature could mess up your primer. Also make sure not to spray too much primer or spray too close, as this can obscure detail in your model. If you happen to spray too much, gently dab away the excess primer with a paper towel. After spraying one side of the sprue, flip it over and spray the next side. Make sure to spray your model's base as well. Once you are finished spraying, collect your sprues and let them dry. This should take 30 minutes to an hour depending on the amount of primer used and where your sprues are drying. After you have finished drying, you can now cut out the pieces that you will use for your model. Find something to cover the surface you are working on so as not to damage it with your tools. It is also a good idea to use a close light source to see more easily of what you're working with. Take your cutters and carefully snip the pieces you are going to need for your model. Make sure not to damage the pieces in the process. With your pieces cut out, it is time to remove mold lines and imperfections. Use your hobby knife to carefully slice off any large imperfections or mold lines on the figure. Be extra careful as the hobby knife is extremely sharp. Next, take your files or sanding material and go along the smaller mold lines or imperfections that were too small to remove with your hobby knife without damaging the model. With the pieces smoothed out, you may want to wash off any dust or filings that have accumulated on the piece. Take the piece and gently run it under water and afterwards dry it off. If you followed these steps, then your piece has been properly prepared and you are now ready for the painting stage.